Thank you, Barry. Well, in fact, we just launched a campaign about what the company is, because it's an unknown company for parts of its activities. And the campaign, Barry, the name of the campaign is More Than You Imagine. So, okay, well, good afternoon to all of you. I think it's been very interesting. It's an honor to be here, and I think it's also a signal that we are on the good path. I'm learning a lot this morning and this afternoon, and hope to keep in this trend also tomorrow. What I want to share with you this afternoon is how we started a few years ago to be aware of the importance of measuring the results of what we were doing, and also knowing what our stakeholders were perceiving about the company, and how we started on this path in a structured and transversal way. Okay, here it is. Okay. Okay, so first of all, very briefly, let me tell you a few words about the company. We are an international oil and gas company with a benchmark in refining, and also with leading products in the petrochemical area. As you can see, we are present worldwide, and we have an integrated business model that allows us to be leaders, for example, in the worldwide, in the raw material that is used for biodegradable detergents. So now, every time you see a washing machine, please think of CEPSA. And also, if you take your cell phone, TV, or car, because we are also an important worldwide producer of the raw material that is used for high-performance materials. We are around 10,000 professionals, and we are currently under a growing and experimental changes, because our shareholder changed by the end of 2011. We have a sole shareholder that was an investment fund from Abu Dhabi called AMEC, recently merged with Mubadala, also from Abu Dhabi. So this change in the ownership of the company has enabled us to accomplish several things. But the first one is that the organization of the company changed. And we are now working under a matrix organization. This is very, very important. Matrix organization, remember that. And also to expand geographically and to develop new products. Our context is changing also because consumers are fortunately more efficient in the use of energy, and also the energy mix is changing, driven also by the increase of the consumption of renewable energies. So we see that the company context is changing, the market is changing, society in general is changing too, because consumers are more demanding, well-informed, and they submit companies like ours to greater public scrutiny. Of course, regulators also have their eye on the company, and we're working on a more and more regulated market. But this is not the only change. There's also big changes in the communication area, and probably I'm not telling anything that's new for you, but it's important to remember it. We've lost focus, or we lose it many times, because we're supposed to be so faster, so agile, that it's frequent that thoughtful thinking is forgotten. And it's something that we have to remember. I agree, we have to slow down in general and think thoughtfully. Multi-channel, we have many channels for communications, for internal, external, and the limits of practice are blurred. The source also has changed. We've passed from a company issuing communication and society receiving it, to society also issuing information about the company. And that drives me to less corporate. Communication is more and more less corporate and has to be more social. It's something that it's hard to understand for organizations, but it's relevant. The other thing is the foundation. I think we all agree that fake news are a real threat for communication and for society in general, and we should all work together, committed, with knowledge and true information in order to recover trust. We have lost trust. Organizations have lost trust. And therefore, it's more difficult to work with stakeholders to establish a dialogue if it's not based on trust. So we have many things to do on that. Consistency with facts. Obviously, we must communicate what we are doing, but it's also very important not to forget to communicate everything we do, otherwise it won't be known. And we have a lot of new tools, and many communication teams are not prepared. We must keep on training. Whatever we are doing in the communication area, we must keep training and learning. And we have to deal with micro-actions and micro-influencers, people that have a lot of engagement but less notoriety. To summarize this, I would say that the more corporate the communication of an organization is, probably it will have the less influence. So we must work on having others talking about us. So in this context, we understood that we needed to do something different. We needed to differentiate the company in a sustainable way, and we understood that the way to do it, given the importance, the relevance of the stakeholders and of society, was by creating and strengthening our relational capital and to integrate the management of intangibles in the company. And that's what we did. We did it following a model developed by Corporate Excellence. As you know, it's a think tank, a non-profit think tank, that whose mission and that was created in order to professionalize the management of the key intangibles. Briefly about the model, well, you all know that you can decompose intangibles in several dimensions. Here we have listed 7: the quality of products and services, governance, people, innovation, the financial results, the commitment with society, and the management quality. And those dimensions can be activated through reputation, brand communication, and also public affairs. So we started to work on that model, which is based on 3 different phases. An initial phase of really diagnosis and defining the identity of the organization, which is composed of 2 steps. We started measurement in a consistent way. A control phase, that would be the second one, based on implementing an organizational model and beginning to implement also non-financial indicators in the management, and a third phase of value creation. So let's take a look at what we did. The first thing we did was study deeply the model and look at what had already been done. So we had defined a whole new brand strategy when there was a change in the organization of the company. An organization working in matrix, it's easier to implement a single brand strategy than an organization obviously working in silos. So we defined the values, the position of the company, the messages, the benefits of the brand, everything, and we communicated it internally and externally. And then we measured how this new positioning and this new brand strategy was being reflected in all the communication, in our own communication and in third parties' communication. Another thing we did was to take a look at all the consulting we were doing to stakeholders, and we standardized it in all the organization so that we had similar methodologies in all our sites, production sites, countries, and regions. And we did that for internal communication, for clients, suppliers, and for local communities. And especially in the case of internal surveys, in the case of climate and engagement surveys, what we did was to include some questions to employees regarding reputation. So this was a great work that was done, as you can understand, with the procurement area, with HR. So it's not something we can do alone from the communication department. Another thing we did, and this is well, typical from organizations like mine, that we have a lot of policies and guidelines to do everything, and it's something very important, especially in growing organizations. We developed a series of policies and guidelines regarding how we wanted our relation with the society and stakeholders to be. But the most important part of this is a management system we developed. And there we indicated the need to have metrics to determine the level of influence of the stakeholders, to identify and prioritize the relevant topics, relevant issues for our stakeholders. The need also to know and to measure their opinion, perceptions, and expectations, and also to know the impact of our social activity. I must confess here that it was much easier to develop all these policies and this management system than to implement them. Because implementing it requires a lot of resources, not only to have the budget, but to have the people with time enough to implement it. But once you do it, well, really the results are very, very good. You have, well, it's not supposed to be there so that you can read it, but it's just there to see that really we developed a whole framework of policies and of tools internally to measure the results of what we were doing. And of course, we started measuring reputation, and we selected RepTrack Pulse as the tool to do it, because we didn't want to be guinea pigs. We took a mature methodology that allowed us in an international company, but where local communities are also very important, because we must not forget that we are exploring and producing crude and gas, that we have refineries and petrochemical plants, so we must be able to have the pulse of what is happening on a local basis, but also on a national and international basis. And I think one of the important things, and this is very interesting, is that we organize ourselves in order to be more agile, in order to be more connected with society, and in order to give to metrics the relevance it has. So what we did is put together under the public affairs and corporate responsibility area all the relational activities of the company, media relations, community relations, institutional relations, the foundation, everything. Then we started to manage brand and communication together under the marketing and brand strategy area. And for me, the most important decision that we took, that was to create the operational efficiency area. This area is in charge of budgeting, purchasing, but the most important and relevant point is that this area is the responsible for metrics and efficiency. For metrics, for everything that is done in the communication department. So no matter if I'm speaking about media, journalists, local community, internal, external, corporate responsibility, every survey, every study that is done is designed with a broad vision. But this is not enough, because we saw a few minutes ago that we have to work with other areas of the company. So what the operational efficiency did was to impulse and lead the creation of a measurement committee for the company. This measurement committee of the company gathers all the professionals that are in charge of measurement in the organization, in the different businesses and functions. They share best practices, they share data, but they also share the possibility and the different surveys in the design phase, so that everybody can participate. And another team that was created, but this time led by our CEO, by Pedro Miró, was the Excellence Group. The Excellence Group's mission is to boost excellence in the organization by comparing ourselves constantly with the best in class. We'll be closer to this, to be in this group of excellent companies. And the way we measure and we do it is using indicators. So what you see is that we are thinking about measurement and metrics in a global way for all the organization. Okay. For non-financial indicators following the different phases of the corporate excellence model, we did our homework in the communication area, and we started reporting quarterly to the management committee, including information about our reputation measurement, also the brand affinity, and how our messages were being reflected internally and externally. And what's important is that other areas of the company did the same, but this was not done because the management committee asked the different functions and areas to progress in non-financial indicators. It was done spontaneously because of the desire of all the areas and functions of being more efficient. And currently, what's missing, because we have almost all the functions and businesses of the company have in their own objectives related to non-financial indicators. What would be the next step? Well, to have a corporate non-financial indicator that would apply to everybody. But we still have a lot to do, a lot. For example, we would like to know the value of the brand, but not in general terms. We would like to know how much it contributes to each of the businesses of the company, so we could be able to activate the brand where it gives more, it has a higher contribution to the business. But in the short term, we are already doing some things. For example, we want to do things simple. So we want to manage intangibles and reputation the same way we do for corporate responsibility. We already have a corporate responsibility team, a transversal team. We have a tool that was designed ad hoc to make the follow-up of the progress of the plan. So why invent something new if around 40% of reputation relies on corporate responsibility? So what we're doing, and we hopefully will do it in 2018, is to integrate both management, reputation and corporate responsibility. But that's not something new for us. When we have a new issue to deal with, for example, the Sustainable Development Goals, what we did is not create or organize meetings and people around this issue alone. We implemented it in our corporate responsibility plan, and everything is seen from different points of view. Well, next, I think it was said this morning, connect the impact of what we're doing with, the efforts we're doing with the impact it has. Well, that's something that we would have to do later, and I'm not sure how we will do it at this point, but what we would like is to have the plan, the actions, and measure how they are perceived, if they are perceived by our stakeholders. And another thing we are working on is how the occurrence of a risk in our risk map affects our reputation in order to direct efforts and resources to implement mitigation plans and processes. So to summarize, I would say that it's difficult to accomplish one by one the steps of the model. But if you look inside your organization, probably you've walked part of the path. You don't start from zero. The important thing is to know where you want to arrive, where's the final port, and to undertake the walk. It's a long walk, and I think that when we reach the fifth step, probably corporate excellence will have designed a sixth one or something else to keep improving. So the point here is that if we want to manage communication or manage reputation or intangibles, those are transversal areas. So measurement has also to be something transversal. You cannot manage communication, reputation, intangibles, nor measurement in a silo in your organization.
Thank you, Teresa.
Thank you very much.
So a very interesting and very different perspective from CEPSA. First question, please. Over here, please.
Thank you, Teresa. I'm Ansi Krul from Biobrick Insight in Stockholm. I found this really interesting, what you're talking about, measuring intangibles and how you've run that process. And it was very interesting to see that connection to corporate responsibility. How do you find that experience so far? And what do you think are the next steps in that process to engage your managers?
Mm-hmm. Well, really, we followed that path because I understood it was, or we understood it was the only way to engage our management. The company is growing. There's so many plans, so many things to do. Working in a matrix manner delivers, in my opinion, a better result, but is exhausting. So if you come up with a new thing, a new organization, better try to, to put it in something already existing. And if it makes sense and it fits, I think it's the way to guarantee it's going to work. So that's the way we thought, and it makes a lot of sense. And the more we are advancing, the more we see that it's the way to do it. In the past, we've tried, it's not the first time that we try to manage intangibles in the company, but what I've learned is that it's important to put the things on the table at the right moment. And if the management is not supportive, if the organization has other priorities, well, it's better to leave it aside and just open the drawer again a few months or years later.
Thank you. Got time for one more. Thank you. Blue T-shirt. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this presentation. It's very interesting. What I wanted to ask you is, you said that CSR and reputation is very close together and that you're thinking about merging it. Mm-hmm. From my experience with other clients, I have the feeling that they're trying to move away from reputation because it's the first thing what comes into mind when you think about CSR, and they want to be closer to the business to help the business to think and change their behavior and see that there is an impact on the business when you're not doing the right things in CSR. What's your opinion about this?
Well, perhaps I should have said that, but for us, business is the first thing. I think it was mentioned before, but in our case, we always ask the business and the functions, what's your objective? What do you want to reach? It's not about producing communication materials or about delivering a certain campaign. It's about helping businesses and functions of the company to reach their goals and their objectives. Therefore, if you focus it that way, it's the same. I mean, I use all the tools I have to make things happen for the business. Not only intangibles, I mean that the point is, and the trick is that we manage together the foundation, corporate responsibility, the brand, sponsorship, public affairs. So we think about the problem or the need of the business or function, and we activate all the resources that are managed together. So it's not so difficult when we have such an organization. Sometimes, again, when you cannot make people work together because they're thinking of losing power because they are only in charge of part, they're responsible of part of the activity, it's a problem. In our case, fortunately, it isn't. It was in the past, but it isn't anymore.
Thank you. Would you please thank Teresa for being with us
Thank
today?
you.
Thank you.